Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to Lineage Break, a Grand Archive TCG podcast. I am your host, Cam. With me, as always, is Steve Gluman. Hello, Steven Gluman.
Hello, Cameron.
Hello. I didn't biff the intro that time.
Yeah, I like it when you biff the intro, though.
Yeah, it's got to be natural. I can't choose to biff the intro.
Choose,
you know?
It has to just be you being you.
Yeah, it's You ever say a word or you write a word
and it doesn't look
and
right.
you do it so many times that it doesn't look right? That's what happens. Is like I repeat it in my head and then I'm like, all right, it's time to do the intro, and then it just comes out wrong. I'm like, what did you do, brain?
I do that all the time. Do you ever just have to you're typing out an email or something and then you have to stop, copy, and then go to Google and paste and to make sure you spelled it right?
Oh, all the time.
I do it all the time.
The
I'm like, why am I like this?
Yeah, all the time. And it's always stupid words that are, way too easy to know how to spell them. It's not like a 3-4 syllable word. It's like pour. I'm like, is there two O's in this? P-O-R? I'm telling people
mine
is pour a lot.
Mine is definitely. That is the word that I always fuck up.
True.
I couldn't tell you how to spell that word.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Couldn't tell you how to spell that word off the top of my head.
What we could tell you is that we're a Grand Archive TCG podcast. We are happy to be here. We have a couple of things to talk about. So, Steve, I guess before we get to that, we have a couple of Grand Archive things to talk about, and we also have Ascent Christchurch. Woo woo! Congratulations
woo, woo.
to all those people that love Christ and love church. That is this weekend, and we will be talking about
and we won't
it.
be there.
We won't be there. We're going to talk a little bit about what we think that event's going to look like. Do you want to talk about that other thing first? Do you want to do it?
Yeah, we should just get it out of the way.
All right. So,
it's some breaking world news.
I got into the car, right, and we're not going to get political here on Lineage Break, but just know that we live in America and we're from Massachusetts. So the political climate is not all that fun right now. So I haven't really been looking at the news. And so I get in the car. This is not about politics, by the way. I get into the car with Steven this morning. And Steven's like, did you hear the news? I'm like, no, I haven't been watching the news because it's just depressing. And Steven told me that we've had, unrelated to any sort of cataclysmic events here in America, a world-changing discovery made in the past 48 hours.
Yeah. For 48 hours, nonstop.
Right.
Aliens are real, and they come from our oceans. These clips are all over the internet.
Yeah.
Please go look it up. Go watch the live stream of Congress talking about it, because it is cringe, and it is fucking hilarious. The last clip I watched was a senator asking a retired general or something if they had communicated with these beings in any way.
And just every time they bury the lead, they're like, well, you see, the word
what,
communication.
What is the word communication, really? We communicate with a Russian plane when it flies into our territory by sending out 2 F-16s.
Yeah, it's like, that's communication.
That is communication, so it's around the same thing. But yeah, no, if you want a good laugh, just type up aliens are from the ocean and you will find hours of comedy.
But so ultimately nothing that we do matters, right? Because now we have to contend with our alien brethren that live in the ocean. Yeah. Can somebody get me the definition of the word alien? I believe they cannot indeed be aliens if they're from the ocean. But so they crash in the ocean? Do they live in the ocean?
I haven't watched enough of it, but from my understanding, they found vessels
60 years ago.
No. That was a different story. They found vessels in the ocean, in a bunch of oceans all over the world, and every government is in an arms race to reverse engineer said weapons, and
it's gonna be really funny when all this is actually true.
Yeah, and we're just memeing on it.
We're just memeing on it, and then we just get nuked by the alien laser beam.
And it was just actually, Pacific Rim is a documentary.
I'd be sick, to be fair.
Yeah.
I'm joining up if I get to pilot the Big Mac. You know?
I've said for the last 20 years that the first country that had big giant mechs,
I'm moving there.
I'd
I'm
join
joining
up. Yeah, put my brain in the robot, dude.
But yeah, so we have so little to talk about this week that we decided.
Yeah, it was
give you a little side.
It was a fun
aliens.
little alien talk.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, you should look them up.
And you should be scared.
It's hilarious.
They are.
Speaking of Alien, I watched Romulus.
Yeah,
it was all right.
Dude, it's so good.
That was all right.
I actually really like Romulus.
I thought it was better than the other two that we got recently.
The only thing that I dislike about Alien Romulus, spoilers, if you are here for the Grand Archive podcast and you want to not be spoiled about Alien Romulus,
which came
skip
out
ahead 2 minutes
while.
Or I don't know, mute me. I didn't like the ending. The weird like humanoid thing.
Yeah.
Just they were doing so well.
Yeah.
It was just an alien movie, and then they play the fucking stupid Prometheus theme, and the humanoid engineer looking motherfucker comes out. I'm like, what? No, stop it. We were so close.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, you know. So anyways, sorry. Quick aside about Alien Romulus. I love that shit. So, what were we talking about? We're Grand Archive podcast. Yeah. You guys like Grand Archive? That's what
we're here for it now. Yeah, we had a little bit of news, right? Some stuff.
Well, the first thing that I want to talk about in now the show proper. If you've been here, you can assume that the show just started 5 seconds ago, regardless of the intro. Our dear friend Trevor, who plays here at the store, very close friend of ours, has just released a new spoiler website for Grand Archive. We're very proud of him.
Woo!
It's called Proxius Codex, so you can go to proxiuscodex.com for all of your Grand Archive spoiler needs, as the previous spoiler site has unfortunately been shut down, as Rav is taking a step away from the game. So our dear friend Trevor wanted to make a site. Anyways, he had been talking about doing it for like other things, and so now there's that sort of hole in the community for a spoiler website. So Trevor is taking that charge. So go support him. He has lots of grandiose plans for that website. I know it is not just going to be, mythic spoiler, right? Like it will be. You can go and look at the spoilers, but he has a lot of other things that he's trying to work on. He's very passionate, very hardworking. So go check out Proxius Codex. Obviously, right now, not a whole lot in the way of spoilers. But hopefully, in the not so distant future, we'll have some cool things up on the website for you to look at. So go
who
support our
knows?
boy.
Maybe Sunday.
Who knows? Maybe Sunday. Oh well.
Christchurch.
Church. Okay. What else we got, Steven?
What else we got? We got Omnidex rewards being
True.
delegated to regional stores to help alleviate some of the stress on Weeb's team.
Yeah, an email went out this week about Omnidex rewards. So traditionally, or I guess maybe that's the wrong word for it, but in the past, Weebs has done all of the fulfillment for Omnidex rewards themselves for like ALC. And it's easy for us that are in America and very U.S.-centric is the usual American attitude to be like, why is it that hard? You just send out stuff in the mail. But obviously there is a real global reach for Grand Archive, and there's a lot of people that play this game that are not from the U.S. And so if these 8 people in Texas are holistically dealing with all of the mailing that has to be done globally, it does take a while, and we saw that with ALC. There was some growing pains, and so they have announced that the Omnidex rewards are going to be done sort of locally. So if you are from North America, they're still being done in-house by Weebs, but they are partnering with a couple of partners that you're probably familiar with if you're from those regions that are usually the big like tournament organizers, like Fable, and I think Game Geek is doing it.
It's Let's Play for Australia, Geek Culture for New Zealand, Fable for Korea, Japan, Philippines, Hong Kong, Taiwan.
So be patient. We are still working on Omnidex fulfillment. I think they said in that announcement if you don't get your rewards by December 10th to send an email. So give it another month. I know that some people are waiting. Even some people in the U.S. here, we have some locals that are waiting. But I think mostly that's because they're stupid and like didn't put their phone numbers. They're like, where's my package?
Right.
But yeah, it's good to, I don't think that it was, in my mind, particularly like a sore topic, but maybe that's just because like we're in our own bubble and we've already received our rewards. But it's always good to be transparent. I'm always a big fan of when Weebs is very transparent and it's like, hey, this is what we're doing and this is how long it's going to take. And if it doesn't happen by this date, send us an email, which you would not get from some other companies that send me packages without tracking. And then when I say it didn't show up, they're like, oh no.
Yeah.
So that's cool. In other transparency news, Santa Clara has had its prize pool increased. This has become sort of a the norm.
Right.
It feels like that all of these events start at 10K, and then as they get more attendance, they jump up to $15,000. So there will be $15,000 in the Santa Clara prize pool. But I think what is maybe more shocking about this event that I don't think that we talked about last week, but maybe we touched on it. I think it was about a week ago, maybe a few days ago, Silidar made a tweet that at the time, and it's been some time since then, this was before this announcement as well, there was 330 Steel participants.
That's so wild. There's so many.
And that's like a month before the event, which is crazy. I'm like a little bit worried. I was talking with some of our locals this week that I believe it's at 385. I think that's the number that you're supposed to run a 10th round of Swiss. And so I'm really curious what will happen in Santa Clara. Maybe there's not even that many tickets. Like maybe it's capped out at like 370 or whatever. But I think it's 385 that you're supposed to run 10 rounds of Swiss. So I wonder if they hit over that 385, if they might have to
change their formatting.
Yeah, consider changing their tournament format, because we see this for like a lot of other larger games. Don't run tournaments the way that GA does. GA is the only one that I've ever played where they do all of their Swiss rounds on day 1, and then they do a hard cut to top 32, where a lot of other games will do like 8 rounds of Swiss on day 1, same tournament, 8 rounds or 4 or 5 rounds the next day. And it's a little bit more like open, I guess, which makes it, I assume, easier to run a larger bracket because you don't have to worry about cutting to exactly 32 people.
Right.
So yeah, I'm curious if we get more than the big number, if they'll make a change. Maybe we'll just do 10 rounds of Swiss on day 1. Who knows? I don't know. Maybe we'll cut to top 64. Lots of things to consider. But I think at 330, I think it is pre-registration the biggest descent that we've ever had, which I think is a first for that as well. Yeah. Usually it's like, oh, this one looks pretty big, and then at the event there's people that like show up day of or buy their ticket that week or whatever that are like planning to go but haven't bought a ticket yet. But I think like right now, regardless of any of those people, it's going to be huge. Yeah. So big, and that's just Steel too. It's a silver event as well. So there will be a real amount of only silver gamers there.
Yep, it is wild.
Yeah, it's crazy.
In other Ascent news, we have a plethora of artists that are appearing at, art is appearing at Ascent, but they will not be. And that is both for Ascent Santa Clara and for Ascent Christchurch. I'm just assuming this is traveling issues.
Yeah, I mentioned this in Merlin's a little bit. And I didn't get the same reaction that I think that I have about the topic, so I think it is worth talking about. So there's going to be these artist exclusive playmats, the ones that you're used to that have like the artist stamp on them. And sort of similar to Worlds, where Jubei couldn't make it. They were planning to make it, but they couldn't make it. Visas are weird.
Right.
We had the Jubei mat at Worlds, but Jubei themselves wasn't there, right? And so this seems to be not, in this case, it's not like a whoopsies, the artist couldn't make it. This is like consciously planned that we're going to have the UD mat in Santa Clara. We're going to have Sao Sao and Xiao Chao. Sao Sao and Xiao Chao at Christchurch. That's Dai Dai and Fang, I believe, being the artists.
Real upset I won't be getting one of those Sao Sao mats.
If you guys are going to Christchurch, want to get a Sao Sao mat for Steven, let us know. So they're sending the mats, and you can buy these artist mats at the event, but the artists will not be there. And my like sort of take on it is I think a little bit more tempered. I mean, we are known sycophants, so maybe that's why. But with an Ascent every month, right? Like, I don't know. I mean, I know that you know, but people that don't traditionally come from a trading card game background, and even current day trading card games, to me, it is like a really big deal when there's an artist in person at an event. Right. And usually for bigger games, it's like held for large scale events like nationals or worlds or whatever. For other games are the ones that get artists to come out, but like your normal GP or calling or whatever you want to call it usually doesn't get that sort of treatment. And so I wonder if it is like a scheduling conflict or a monetary reason or what have you, that it's just like a little bit easier for them to send these cool mats, which gives you like a reason to come get the exclusive merch from Ascent Santa Clara or whatever, without having to fly out an artist and worry about that artist's time. And I don't know, but that's not the reaction that I got from people when I posted about it in like general or whatever.
What were they? It was just like mild, like
more so like hoping that this is not the new norm and that we do still get artists at these Ascents, which of course like I would hope that as well. I just don't know if that's feasible, right? Yeah,
especially if it's literally every month.
Yeah, that's the hard part, right? Like there's an Ascent literally every month, and the game isn't, I think, quite big enough that we have this huge dearth of artists, right? Like if you look at like A and B, I think there's like maybe
15,
20, 30 maybe artists that do art for the game. And so when you're talking about exactly 30 people, it's a little bit harder to get them, in some combination to fly out to an event every 30 days across the world. And a lot of them, I would say the majority of them, are from SEA. And so if obviously a lot of the events are sort of North America centric because that's where the game is from, but it's way harder to fly those artists out, to North America.
Right.
So good and bad. The mats are sweet. Like I can't wait to get the UD mat in Santa Clara. I am jealous of those that have access to the Sao Sao and the Xiao Chao mat in Christchurch. So we'll see. I guess it'll be like kind of telling in March when we get Seattle, if maybe this was just like a scheduling conflict for this section of the Ascent schedule, or like if in Seattle we get this as well, we can sort of assume that this is the new norm once we get a little bit more of a precedent set. But like obviously I assume when Worlds comes around in June, we will have a bunch of artists in-house, and it does sort of make that feel a little bit more special too, I think. But of course, when we went to Toronto, it was great to have Ghoul and Hanshu there, and like I was thrilled to be able to get art done by them. So I'm not like keep those artists away from me. Like I wish there was artists at every event, and I'll lose all my money.
Cam, honestly, they should keep the artists away from Cam, so he actually has money in his wallet.
That's true. I like supporting the artists. But yeah, how do you guys feel? Let us know. Are you guys upset? Are you guys gonna baby rage and quit the game because there's not an artist at every Ascent that you go to? I don't know. Let us know.
Yeah. Other than that, I think that just brings us up to tomorrow.
Woo-woo!
Ascent Christchurch will be happening. And we do have the deck for everyone to play. It is you won't ever believe it. Cam?
Yeah, we did this spiel before the show, but I'll do it again now, just for you, the viewer. So Steve and I right? Our journalistic integrity, right? We are content for you first,
Right.
and gamers second, right? And so we do hear some things, and we have some friends in the community, right? And so I would say that it's not infrequent that we know what some of the people at the event are going to be playing because they trust us and our journalistic integrity.
Right.
And so we try to keep that very close to the chest. Like anytime somebody tells me or Steve or whatever what they're playing for an event, we try not to tell anybody. We don't even tell our own team, right? Because that would be unfair. However, for Ascent Christchurch, it's too little, too late, and we're whistle blowing the whole thing,
And it's ubiquitous.
It's ubiquitous.
Everyone is playing the same
every
deck.
single person in the tournament is playing the same deck, and
Oh, it's next weekend? Are we just dumb?
is it next weekend?
Cam told me this morning it was today.
I thought it was this weekend. Is it next weekend? Anyways, same diff. I saw people flying out this week, so I assumed it was tomorrow. Y'all stupid.
Yeah, usually.
Hey, dude, listen. You're cutting me off in the middle of my spiel, right?
But anyways, we're gonna blow the whistle anyways.
Yeah,
and
on Christchurch.
now
next
you
week.
know. Now everyone will know.
This was meant for the audience that sees the show next week. Chat, okay? Comes out on Friday before the event next week. Jesus.
Oh, look at all those Gwendolyn's in your backpack.
Anyways, everyone's gonna play Merlin.
Yeah.
We think.
Yeah, everyone's going to be playing Wind Merlin, particularly Diana into Merlin, because that deck is stupid.
Yeah, so jokes aside, Steve and I wanted to talk a little bit about the metagame for the upcoming Christchurch, because we got like a little bit last time, right? Where we were preparing for Toronto, and Steve and I were playing in Toronto, so it was a little bit different. For this one, we have a sort of outsider's perspective, right? But like obviously the Toronto meta was super cursed. So like I feel like we haven't seen anyone play with Mortal Ambition at all, because the meta for Toronto was so unbelievably cursed that it was like not a good barometer for what AMB is going to look like.
Yeah.
And so I think it is worth talking about what we think Christchurch is going to look like, because it is, for at least all intents and purposes, I think the first Mortal Ambition Ascent. With Vanitas now basically unplayable, I think. I think that deck still exists, sure, but I think it is pretty bad, and I don't think that there's a whole lot of merit to playing Vanitas in a world where A, obviously 3 visits has been errated, but B, Nullifying Mirror is like really punishing for that deck that does solely rely on Veiling Breeze repeatedly to keep them alive. So. So, what does the game look like with Vanitas gone? And we're positive people here on the show.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't particularly have positive things to say about what the perceived metagame is going to be. We've had this sort of issue, like this real issue, that any time, and I mean literally any time, that there is not a sort of best deck, right, where the metagame has not solidified into some sort of new boogeyman deck. For a while it was, Vanitas, obviously. Slimes last season was the boogeyman deck. Tristan before the Slimes advent, before she got Korhazi Outlook banned. Before that, it's Luxem Xander, right? Whenever one of these decks is not on top, the de facto choice to be on top is Merlin.
Right.
And something that I found just like so infuriating is the advent of this North Merlin deck. Have you seen this, Steven?
Yep.
Yeah. That goes to Kongming level 1, gets her Shifting Currents to go north, mostly for Harmonious Mantra, but I think also sometimes for Solar Pinnacle if you're playing red. And then levels into Merlin. And it is just like, to me, so severely disappointing that this really, really cool mage got printed. And I think Kong Ming's text and her flavor and her play style is all like super interesting and skill testing. And there's no reason that you should play her because you should just play Merlin instead.
Right.
Which just like feels so turbo bad.
Right. Because why would you maybe draw a card every other turn when you could just draw a card every other turn?
And like the part for me that like feels the worst is that Kong Ming's ceiling is way higher.
Right.
And the things that you can do with that deck are insane. But they require effort and like planning, and you have to think. And Merlin doesn't require you to do any of those things, right? Just number tick up, I play Ghost of Pendragon, whatever, I draw 15 cards, game's over. And so hopefully we're wrong, right? There's always that chance that we don't know what the hell we're talking about, but I would expect to see a lot of Merlin this season. Maybe Wind, maybe Fire, whatever.
Well, they don't even need to play Fire anymore, right? They just played the Wind deck, and then they play Imperial Seal.
Right.
I've died many a times to of the Wind Merlin deck that just goes, well, I have 30 cards in my hand now. I'll pop Imperial Seal and Fireball you 4 times.
Right.
It's like, okay. Neato.
Yeah, like you mentioned, that sort of that Diana deck that Caven had played at at like a Yeti a couple of weeks before Toronto.
Right. That deck just draws like 40 cards.
Yeah, it's very shades of FTC Merlins is what that deck feels like, where we were playing this whole like disorienting winds package to flicker your own Ghost of Pendragon. The only difference between FTC Merlin and this current Merlin iteration is obviously Sword of Avarice's banned, but the sort of like gameplay loop is the same, except now that deck has the access to play Imperial Seal for Fireball and has an actual win con where. The FTC like Wind Merlin deck didn't really have a way to kill you other than beat you down with Horse 1,000 times.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't want to spend like too much time dooming, but I think it does feel pretty bad that it seems like the way that the game is right now is that we either need this like turbo broken meta deck to sort of like shape a metagame. And I'm a Slimes defender. You guys know that I've been a Slimes defender for a long time. And so we haven't really been in like a Merlin meta in a little bit, which feels pretty good.
Right.
I just really hate that the floor is always there, right?
Right. What it's really disheartening to me is like you were saying earlier, like you print a brand new mage and she's super cool and she has all these cool things she can do with it, and instead of anyone being innovating with that, they just say, I'm going to take the one good bit from this and I'm going to play Merlin again, and it just works, and it's stupid.
Yeah.
It
does feel bad.
It's like at what point are we actually going to have a meta where like Merlin isn't like the viable choice?
I think it's tough, right? Like
I honestly think Crux is okay.
Right.
But when you introduce it on Merlin, it's just not okay. Because it just pushes it just that much further past, like Lorraine is fine. She's fun. She does what she wants. She makes swords.
Right.
But like with Merlin, it doesn't matter. Like nothing you do matters against a Merlin player. You put them to 27 and you will die.
Yeah, it's I think it's a really interesting puzzle, I guess, for the development team. Like I understand why Merlin exists, because before Merlin, right, control decks were pretty bad. Right. It was a very aggro-centric game at the beginning of Dawn of Ashes, and I guess like Merlin's not really a typical control deck, but she is that sort of like go tall advanced element deck, right, that wants to take the game late and take over the game with her advanced element stuff. Which is like I think the cool part about Grand Archive.
Right.
I'm not particularly like a big aggro player, and so I think that having that play style is cool. The issue that I have, right, is that Merlin does gatekeep a lot of the advanced element decks from playing any like gameplay style that is similar to hers. She sort of locks them all out of that. Right. So like you see decks like Exia Jin, I think is a really cool deck. Of course we mentioned it a little bit earlier, but like Luxem Xander has his own identity. Umbra Diana. Like, you can build these like very niche heroes and advanced element pools to sort of give them something that they can do that Merlin can't. I think even now, like Arisana, because of the printing of Polaris, has a reason to play Ari that is not Merlin, right? Because Polaris is a thing that only Arisana can do, even though Ari's like level 3 game plan ultimately is pretty similar to Merlin's, right? But the problem is when you print anybody that is similar to that, like, I want to generate card advantage in the late game, they just get outclassed by Merlin because her floor is so high. And so, like, I feel like that's what happened with Kongming, is Kongming's pool, like, really wants you to generate card advantage and take over the late game. But she does it worse than Merlin, because Merlin gets to play Ghost of Pendragon and gets to not work for her additional levels, right? Whereas, like, it is really hard for Kongming to fireball you for like 8. She has to like really work to do that, whereas, you know, Merlin waits 4 turns and then she's just like, oh look, this instant speed card in my hand kills you. So it might just be a mage issue,
Right.
We do see a lot of crossover for other classes getting to do their own thing, but as a spell enjoyer, you know, I like mage, I like cleric, and those are the classes that Merlin sort of preys upon, like pushing them out of the format. So, like I said, I was really disheartened to see this like North Merlin thing just be like the way that people are playing Kongming. And I can't even like blame them, right? Like I don't think that it is worse than playing Kongming. I think it is probably a better decision to, you know, leverage Harmonious Mantra being an absurd card. And again, unfortunately, Harmonious Mantra is a better card in Merlin than it is in its intended place, right? So, yeah, I don't know. We could be wrong, right? We're sort of we're in the dark to a certain extent. Obviously, we play locals and we hear things. And we hear people talk about, you know, decks that they're thinking about or like contenders for the meta, right? But like we could ultimately be wrong, and maybe there is a secret hidden deck. I think maybe if you had asked us 8 months ago if Luxem Xander was going to be the best deck in the format that Luxem Xander was the best deck in, I might not have seen it. I might have just assumed that you should play Merlin, right? But, you know, just airing our grievances. Let's ban level 3 Merlin, you know?
Right. I think that would be best for the game. Because like we're sitting here like a year later from its printing, and we're still like bemoaning Merlin.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, like, I want champions to be good, and I don't want Merlin players, people that like enjoy Merlin, to like feel bad. I'm not trying to like target people, right? And you want your champions to be good, and you want them to be long lasting. I mean, that's ideal, right? Especially if you're somebody that's like really into playing Merlin, and you like bought all your CSRs, and you're like a big Merlin fan, and you just really like her character or whatever. I don't want your deck to get banned, and so like it feels bad. I don't think that they'll ever really ban a champion. I think that is like a pretty tough line in the sand to draw, right? It makes the whole game feel a little bit scarier, where you like invest a bunch of money into these cool scribbly versions of your champion, and then they just decide to ban it. But I do think that there is some problematic design there. And I've said it on the show, and I think you have as well, that I really hope when they revisit Crux, which will be probably sooner rather than later, that they take that opportunity to maybe shape Merlin a little bit. Maybe it requires Merlin to be errata, and maybe it requires some cards to be removed from her pool. I know a lot of people just say to like ban Fireball or whatever would like maybe fix some of the Merlin issue, but then we get into this same problem with this like Wind Merlin deck, right? That's just going to draw 30 cards and, you know, not have Fireball, but still give you this miserable gameplay experience, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So we'll see at Christchurch next week, I guess.
I can't believe
what people play. But I do think in sort of an untested format, she does stand above the rest.
Yeah.
There are a couple of cool decks that have emerged out of AMB. I want to give a huge shout out to Killy and his Exia Jin deck, which had a great showing in Toronto, which Godspeed, that format was so incredibly cursed. So for all intents and purposes, I think that Killy got second place at that tournament, if you don't count Vanita Sticks, which is quite impressive. So there are things to explore with AMB. I think the Warrior decks are the most interesting because I think, unfortunately, it seems like the Mage pool, at least right now, is sort of being monopolized by Merlin. But we can also hope that with Abyssal Heaven coming out, Jesus, that one took me a minute. With Abyssal Heaven coming out, which will be giving us more Terra support, that some of that Terra support maybe crosses back over into Kongming, and maybe with Kongming getting a little bit more support in an element that Merlin is not allowed to play, there will be some merit to playing her over the Crux villain.
Right.
But we will see. Something to note, this weekend we do have Yeti Regionals, I believe, is literally tomorrow. Maybe I'm wrong on that one too, but I think Yeti is literally tomorrow. And so maybe we'll see see a little bit of a taste of the metagame at Yeti Regionals as well. Yeti Regionals is Sunday. Thanks, Noel. Noel is the paragraph that I had to read as well. Now that he's here, I can read that for you. This is why it came up in my mind that we decided to talk about it today.
Invitational is tomorrow.
True. So 2 big tournaments this weekend. So a wise man once said, and this is Noel. So anybody that wants to know why they won't do anything about Merlin is because there's staunch Merlin defenders in the Noel from Chess Club. So if you ever have any problems with Merlin, make sure you take it up with Noel from Chess Club. That's Noel from Chess Club. Just making that very clear. Merlin was a serious design mistake when compared to more recent abilities like Kongming Level 2 and Prima Materia. While Merlin draws a card every other turn, the other two draw every turn, and Prima does damage on top of that, which is really encroaching on Merlin's current identity. Merlin seriously needs an errata to be brought back up to par, something like drawing a card with every level counter instead of every other. And in order to maintain her control-focused identity rather than the damage rush, Merlin's level 2 effect should be updated to be inherited. By wording Merlin level 3 to trigger on gaining a level counter, this would bring in some much-needed synergy between the level 2 and 3 champion cards, something that is currently severely lacking. I hope that with these design updates, we will see this all-time favorite GA champion return to a playable status and compete in the current metagame. So that's as opposed to that Noel made yesterday. So yeah. It's time to leave.
It's lunchtime, guys. Sorry. Boy.
So if you're worried about Merlin's place in the metagame, don't worry. She's bad and needs to be buffed.
Oh, God.
Seems reasonable. Yeah, so...
oh, boy.
We'll see in Christchurch next week what shakes out, but I'm a little... seems a little weak. I'm a little worried about... our favorite boogeyman villain.
Yeah.
At least she's doing her job. Right?
Yeah, she's playing the heel.
She is truly villainous, and I guess that is noteworthy.
Right.
So that is all that we have this week. Thankfully, we do have a couple of tournaments, like we mentioned, to talk about on next week's episode. We do have the Lux Map Invitational, which to my
excuse me.
To my understanding, the Lux Map Invitational is there was a open, the Luxeris Map Open, that happened maybe like 3 months ago. I think I did coverage for it.
I think you did too.
I can't remember. And the top 8 of that event got an invite to this tournament, and then the other 8, I believe, are Ascent winners. So it's a pretty stacked tournament tomorrow. I don't know what the prize support looks like, so I don't know if everybody's going to be like holistically memeing, especially our Ascent winners that are playing tomorrow. Might be holding some secret sauce for Christchurch the following week. I'm not sure. But we'll see how that shakes out, and then we have the Yeti regionals on Sunday as well. So we'll have 2 big tournaments to talk about next week. Maybe get a shade of what the A and B meta is going to look like ahead of Christchurch, and then I think Christchurch will have a huge bearing on what Santa Clara looks like, which is just a couple of weeks after that. God, I have to sneeze.
Then sneeze.
No.
Just not at me.
I won't. So, sorry it was a bit of a short episode today, guys, but thank you for watching. Hopefully you didn't mind us complaining too much about how broken Crux is.
Yeah. Just Merlin. Kark is fine.
Yeah, Crux is fine. Yeah, true. A Spirit Blade Ghost Strike is a banger card, and we won't hear any differently.
I'm a big fan of Dispersion, actually.
I'm not. Fuck that card. Stupid. All right. Hey, thank you guys for watching. We will see you next week.
Have a good one, guys.
Whoop whoop.
Whoop whoop.
Whoop 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 whoop.
Whoop.
Whoop whoop. Like a train, Steven.
Whoop whoop.
Whoop whoop.